stay for a council meeting, go ahead and exit. And then we talked about rearranging. Is council okay if we just leave the chairs and tables where they are for council as well? Everybody okay with that? All right, well, we'll do that. So our first item this evening is go to the order. Does anyone have anything to share this evening as we get started?
I'm not sure if this is the correct place. I would like to see us remove the item on the agenda relative to the proposed contract with Madrona Group. I'd like to take that off the agenda.
That would be under additions and corrections.
No, he asked me in the good of the order, if I had something under the good of the order. I'm explaining what I want to talk about for the good of the order.
So if we do that, we can do it certainly under at the council meeting. Would council like to have any discussion on that, or do you want to wait until the council meeting? It's a key topic. There's a lot going on with this, and I think it would take quite a bit of discussion. In the future, the plan is to put RFP out, is that correct, Mayor?
Yep.
Be able to look at different legal and what our options are, be able to approve a contract and look at costs. The short term, the reason for putting it on tonight, I think we have kind of a limited fund.
Correct, so my contract authority, without coming to council for confirmation on this is 7,500. So we did the gap to begin services for land use, and we're definitely going to blow through that very quickly, and we need to have city attorney services, which is under Supreme Court ruling, is under the mayor's authority.
So,
I have a question about that.
Oh,
May I
yeah,
ask,
go ahead.
Mayor? Okay, I have that contract in front of me. It says specifically land use attorney matters. It does not. It actually has some very specific exceptions under this contract. One of which is matters in which attorneys have a conflict. We now have information which may pose a conflict of interest and tortious interference. So I would say we need to put that aside. And since you're not our general counsel, I think the information you've provided us is sufficient.
I do have a city attorney contract with the city as well.
It's a land use attorney.
I actually have a city attorney contract.
And where is that? Would you like to provide that?
That's a separate one.
Well, then why wasn't council provided it?
So how long is this one?
It's just a $7,500 one.
Oh, that's
It's a
right.
replacement.
It's
We just terminated
Right.
the other one, and
Yeah.
I credited the city all of any
That
funds.
isn't really the issue. We're talking about a legal conflict of interest issue.
So you terminated what? We terminated the land use attorney contract services. So we obviously didn't want to get into a area of serial contracting, and so I just wrote off any charges that had been under the land use contract, and we started fresh with a new just general legal service
So you
contract.
don't, so what you're saying is you do not believe you have a conflict of interest with Kenny and Deason?
No more so than Kenny and Deason has in this.
Pardon me?
No more so than Kenny and Deason has in this
That's
discussion.
not my question to you.
No, I do
Well,
not believe.
let's just take it
That's
one at a
right.
time. I think the key point here is if there's concern about whether we leave it on the agenda or take it off. We can certainly move forward at council taking it off the agenda. I think there are several things to consider. One is there is a time frame here that's important. The other one is, we like to have some discussions over time. We don't always adhere to that, but especially under tight time constraints. And we do have one council member absent this evening. So there's a couple things to be considered. I suggest we go ahead and move this and have a discussion at the council meeting on it. Other input on this?
So do we still have a contract with Kenny and Deason?
Yes, they're not exclusive, so you can have multiple attorney contracts.
And we do have multiple attorney contracts. We contract with some law for employment, as well as Keating, Buckland, and McCormick for public records. And that is standard practice for multiple cities and multiple attorney firms representing different specific issues.
I just have some information from MRSC that's just on their website, and I could be misunderstanding, maybe you could clarify, but it pretty clearly says, if legal services are to be provided by contract, as decided by council, the attorney position has not been made an office, and the position has not been made an office. The council would have sole authority to decide who should provide the services and the content of the professional services contract, compensation, responsibility for ordinances and contracts, meetings to attend, etc. The mayor or manager may, of course, offer recommendations. And it continues to talk more about that. And so I read what you said, and so I'm just feeling like I'm seeing kind of conflicting opinions. And I usually look at MRSC as, you know, they specialize in assisting cities to understand the law, so.
Well, MRSC, yes, they do assist cities with interpreting the law. However, their information is not legal advice. It doesn't take into account specific circumstances of each city. And quite frankly, most of that advice is written by very junior attorneys who work for MRSC.
And if I may add, what I just heard was a description of mayor and manager form of government, not.
Says the mayor or manager may, of course, so it's referring to both types.
It may not be, and if that's not specified, because city manager form of government also have mayors. So, if that's not spelled out, I don't think we can deduce from that information what the intent is there.
I mean, I would dispute that the city council has to approve any legal services agreement. That is correct.
I mean, this is specifically talking about acquiring attorney services.
Yes, and the city council has the authority to contract for those services. They approve the contract, but as set forth in my memo, the execution and negotiation of the contract is really in the mayor's purview.
Well, what I'd like to do before we move on to discuss, because I think it's healthy to have this discussion. And Joyce, so this is my understanding, so we can bring this up to council. We can ask to have it removed. That would allow us to have some discussion on it. And I think that's probably a more appropriate format so we can get through the cow in time. But I also understand that, you know, this is a key issue and one that, you know, I've talked to council members and this is a concern. So I don't want to downplay that or just simply push it off. I just want to have the proper format so we can have that discussion. Will that allow?
Well, there's a problem with that, because the information brought forward by Madrona has been brought forward as a client privilege. So that means whether, you know, regardless of contracting, that means we should not be discussing that in a public forum. I would say what that means is, again, this be tabled and it go into an executive session with appropriate public notice. It's really that simple. Whether or not you're under contract is not, we can debate that, we can debate this.
Oh, I am under contract.
Well, no, I'm talking specifically about a situation where there could be a conflict of interest.
Well, if there's a conflict of interest, then there's going to be a conflict of interest
That's
with
correct.
either. And so
That's
perhaps you
right.
should ask a third-party attorney to.
Or maybe we just do an RFP, which is
Well,
a crazy
which
public.
I understand is.
Well, it's not my problem, Mayor.
So
And it's not.
let's hold up our conversation for just a minute.
So I brought forth an issue. You've put this on the table as a client privilege. That means it cannot be discussed in the public fully, period. So the only solution is to remove it from the public agenda, schedule appropriately by the city clerk an executive session where the public has been notified there will be an executive session, and continue those deliberations in an executive session, which, by the way, you don't need to be present at because it involves you. And again, there's a conflict of interest in that discussion, nor would Ken and Deason be present.
My only concern with that is I'm not sure that you would have a basis for an executive session.
You've given us one. You said this is a client privilege.
So
that's
let's
not a
hold
basis
up on
for
our
us.
conversation.
That is to be determined otherwise. You cannot discuss privileged information in public. You have said that repeatedly, Rachel.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, then
It's the
that's what
council-
you've done.
Excuse me, it's the council's privilege to waive, actually. So the
Okay,
council can distill
let's hold up on
whatever
our
they want to.
conversation for a minute. I understand the importance of this, and God, I appreciate you bringing it up. You know, I don't think we're advancing anything by having that discussion here. We need to, you know, I think we can talk about it at council whether they have it. Tonight it's on the agenda for discussion or decision. We can certainly, as council, remove it if we feel like we need to have more background information, whether it needs to go to executive session, or whether council agrees that it should move forward. So I do think there's some problems with this, concerns with it that probably aren't going to be settled tonight, obviously, and until those get answered.
I have another question. I was told Kenyon Deason, Hillary from Kenyon Deason would be here tonight.
She'll be here at the council meeting, as usual.
Well, and that brings another point, which is that what we really should have is the principal of Kenyon Deason be present when any further deliberations go here. That would be my opinion.
So I'm just curious, because I'm not sure, I haven't talked to every council member. Is there a strong feeling whether to leave it on the agenda or pull it from the agenda? You know, I hate to do those straw polls, but I'm just trying to get a sense since council members brought it up. It is on there for discussion or decision tonight. Is there a strong sense that that should just be pulled from the agenda tonight?
I think this could wait till after budget. That's more important at this time.
Priority.
I would like to speak up to that. The fact of the matter is, the council has allocated funds for legal services. Those funds are allowed to be expended. We need to have a city attorney of record, and we were notified officially the day that the firms broke up.
And what they,
You told me we have an attorney of record. We're still contracted with Hillary at.
But we are also contracted with Madrona Law Group. We're also contracted with Keating, Buckling, McCormick, and others. So the.
But you just said we weren't contracted with an attorney, so we have a problem. We are
No,
contracted.
we are, however, once the $7,500 gap is done, we have to have some more.
Not necessarily, because we still have
And it
a
is
contract.
within the mayor's authority per legal advice and Supreme Court decisions to determine who the city attorney is. And we can have this discussion later on, but I would like to warn the council that you are putting the city at an exposure risk right now that I do not feel comfortable.
Mayor, you have consistently put the city at risk by doing things like this.
That is not
Yeah,
accurate.
no,
I follow city attorney
no,
advice, and you guys
I'm
are
tired of
really
this.
over the line.
This needs to
So
stop.
So let's go ahead and stop the conversation. I feel comfortable moving this to council where we can have, more discussion. That's what's on the agenda. I think a lot of this is related to some of the budget and trust issues that we've had. It's funny how these things start to move out into other things and create a lot of contention. And I hate for everybody because it's not the type of cohesive government and collaboration that I think our citizens like to see. And I'm not trying to fault anybody for being there. I'm just saying that when you find yourself here, I think we have to stop and take a deep breath and really be careful. It's easy to argue points on both sides. But for me personally, one of the most important things is what are we doing moving forward? How do we work on being collaborative? We're not always going to agree on things, but we get into a point where we start fighting each other, and most folks watching from the outside don't understand the arguments, but more importantly, they just see their government being dysfunctional, and I'm trying to avoid us getting there as much as I can. In some cases, there's just no choice, but I think that once sides get kind of deeply in camp, get our backs against the wall, harden our hearts, it's easy to just start shooting at each other. These are important issues, and I have no issue whatsoever with us as council, mayor, city administration having real collegial discussions, debates. They can even be really tough debates about, what's the best way to go. But I do think we have to be real careful about labeling each other. Let's keep focused on what we're trying to accomplish, focus on the facts. And I expect we'll have that discussion. I just don't think the place to do it is at the Cal. I was trying to get a gauge for whether we just wanted to pull it, how important it was to leave it there. We can certainly have that discussion this evening. I know that doesn't answer the question whether we ought to just pull it. And I think there's some good reason to just pull it and look at it next year. we have a lot of other things on the agenda. I don't know how much time it's gonna take. We might need to look at legal advice. It's hard to do from sitting down in a chair in front of the public in such a tight time frame. So I don't know what the best way is to go. At this point, I'd just like to move that to the council meeting, and we can have that discussion. If we want to bring it up again, pull it, council can just simply vote and say whether you want to pull it, whether this is too contentious right now, or whether we want to go ahead and move it forward. And then we can have a discussion and decide what to do. I think that would be a wise thing at this point. I know that didn't solve it, and I don't mean to just take down the street, but it gives us a little time to think about it here. Are there any for the good of the order? Pretty quiet. Okay. One of the key things that we have next is Riverview School District. They have a 10% annexation petition. I don't have who was going to do this. You got it, Troy?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Troy, just for the help of our citizens who are here, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody and let them know what your role is in the city?
Yes, so I'm Troy Davis, Senior Planner with the City of Duval, and I'm here to talk about the annexation.
And we also have the Riverview School District here, and appreciate being here and participating as well. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate all the council's work on this.
Thank you.
Are you okay? That's a shin killer.
Troy, how much time do you need? I'm just...
Probably 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, this won't be long, this will be really short.
Thank you, Troy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So back in November, we did the introduction on the 10% petition with the City Council introducing kind of the annexation process and what the school district was proposing to annex. I did update this colored map. I realized in the program when you can remove the background that it removed one of the annexation areas, so it's a little bit more careful this time. So I made sure it included all the areas because it had cut off one of the school district annexations from before. So this is an accurate map. In the future packets too, we can also include it as an exhibit so you can see the ordinance references that line up with all these numbers just to kind of give you a line-by-line history of how the city has grown. So the specific point for talking tonight comes down to RCW 35A 14120 that requires legislative bodies to meet with petitioners within 60 days from the date they submit their petition. So they submitted a petition back in October, and so that 60-day deadline for meeting with the petitioner is coming up here shortly, which is why we have scheduled a meeting tonight to discuss that. And while we have the Riverview School District here. So just to pinpoint for the record, kind of what we're talking about. So here's the vicinity map of Duval. So this proposed annexation is to the far east, little pocket there. Here's a zoom in, about just shy of 5-acre parcel there. That's just a little pocket that's outside of, currently outside of city limits, but within our urban growth area. And again, you can see with the green color, it has the pre-designation of public facilities in our comprehensive plan. So more into the purpose of tonight's meeting, council can accept annexation as proposed. And again, none of this is formal action at this point, more discussion with the applicant. The council can talk about geographically modifying the proposed area for annexation. We can discuss other potential conditions for annexation with regards to utilities, roads, parks that usually come up in the form of a pre-annexation agreement. The city council, through the discussion, can reject the annexation. The formal decision is not appealable for the RCW. If accepted, the city council will decide whether we're going to simultaneously zone this property as part of the annexation, and whether the annexation will include any or portion of the city's indebtedness. So our staff recommendation, getting to this point, so we recommend accepting the 10% petition, keeping the boundaries as proposed. We don't see any need to shift the boundaries as part of this proposal. We recommend that the city simultaneously adopt the public facilities zoning with this proposal. That the assumption of indebtedness is there, and that the city council possibly enter into a pre-annexation agreement as part of this process moving forward. So kind of next steps would be post this meeting, we're looking to start the public hearing process, assuming that the city council is open to the 10% petition moving forward. And we would start those public hearings on the 10% petition in beginning of January 2020. So, and again, these public hearings on the 10% petition is just with regards to accepting the 10% petition. If they get through that hearing process and city council gives the green light, then they start the 60% petition. But these are necessary steps regarding the 10% before we get to that point. So now I guess I'm opening the floor to school district as well. So if there's questions or if there's discussion amongst the city council about how to move forward or how you want to move forward with the petition.
We were going to, we're not facing the audience, we were going to, if you're okay, have the school district just come up with.
Sure, great. I'm sorry. Councilmember Knapp.
Were you going to do a presentation all of a sudden, or were you just up here to answer questions?
I'm just up here to
Okay.
answer
Sure,
questions.
I didn't want to jump the gun all of a sudden. I thought, oh, wait, there might
Yeah.
be something coming.
And
So-
thank the council, this has been historical, we've known for some time, we wanted to do this. There's 20 acres up top and another 20 acres on the bottom that's really not, there's no future plan to build on any of that. But if there ever is a plan to build or do anything with the property, which there isn't now, it'd be nice to be able to work with one jurisdiction that also is able to provide services to the property. So we'd just rather work with one jurisdiction on it. All the rest of that property is city of Duval.
Questions from council? Councilmember Knapp.
So this is a question because I think the community would be curious.
Sure.
I saw on one of the bond presentations that it said potentially there could be an expanded parking lot, and I wasn't sure if that's something possibly with this property, and I know there was a property across the street. What I do know is when I went to get my son a parking spot, they were basically all gone.
Yes.
And the sophomores haven't started getting their driver's licenses
Yes.
yet. So I think the community's curious.
The parking, additional parking would be across the street with the, 58 acres we're trying to purchase.
Okay.
That's the plan, and the council members and the mayor over a long period of time, as well as residents in the area. And they've been really great, actually, but it is frustrating, event after event after event during the school day, having additional cars parked for good reason and safety. The part of the agreement when we added on to Cedar Crest and built additional parking was to not be parking during school hours along the roadway. That sets up a dangerous situation with traffic cruising by, and you're literally opening your door into traffic. So priority number one when and if the other annexation works out is, or if it doesn't, is to build a parking lot across the street, maintain those trails, and figure out what the use of those trails, what the rules and restrictions are going to be for public use and school use.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from council? Not seeing any.
I've had to park. Never mind the kids and the parents.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Good, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, our next item is our 2019-2020 mid-planning and review and modification administration.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're making progress, so that's always a good thing. We had a good meeting with the Finance Committee last Wednesday. Of course, the packet was due on Friday, so we tried to get as much information together in that short amount of time, and we definitely realized that we still would have to make some additional changes based on conversations with our Finance Committee. So we did email out and give you a copy of some adjustments that we have made since the last version that was in your packet that went out on Friday. And one of the items that we heard in the Finance Committee was really talking about our organizational chart, but also about our FTEs and kind of what was in the original budget versus what has happened in 2020 through our promotions in the organization. And so we were actually working on all of this mostly yesterday and then some today. Like even today, we figured out that we still have one item that we had to adjust in our organizational chart. And so we have done that, and that was to wastewater treatment plant, that department. But if you look at the organizational chart, we have updated it. And what we did do is we put what positions were within the departments, and then if there was an FTE, you'll see that on the parentheses, that's the number of employees that are within that particular department. So it does look, I think it looks pretty clean, but we still need to make the one adjustment, and Steve will, while we've been having a cow, we already made that change and it's off to the clerk. So Steve, do you want to just talk about the resource change real quick?
Sure. So is this is reflected on the printed copy that we just got, the changes on there?
Everything except for this one,
This
for the
one.
wastewater treatment plant,
Thank
all
you.
the others remain the same.
The wastewater treatment plant, as you have in front of you, shows an ops manager, 2 wastewater 3s, and then it lists 1 vacant wastewater 2. So that should be a wastewater 1 for the vacancy. That is not in the process due to workload on obtaining or procuring right now. It's actually a point of discussion, honestly, with the plant manager and myself on the actual role, because if you look closely at the board as well as the salary steps, to be a maintenance 1 or maintenance 2 in Public Works is different than we have listed for wastewater 1, 2, 3. Those are licensed roles, and Mike's not sure that we need licensed roles for the work that he has in mind for this position. We don't need to be tested and satisfied with, state license for operator 1, 2, or 3. But the wages are so goofy, like the wastewater 1 is lower than the maintenance 1. And the way that those 3, the 1, 2, and 3 progress, it's different than how the 1 and 2 of the Public Works progresses. So, like I said, we're in no hurry. It'd be nice for somebody to start at the bottom and then work their way up. It does take a handful of years. It takes at least 1 year working for sewer operations to even test for the wastewater 1. For wastewater 2, it's 3 years. For wastewater 3, it's over 5. So it takes a while to be eligible to even test for that. So if we couldn't, let's say we advertised for wastewater 1 and nobody was qualified because they don't have a licensure. That's something to consider. So what Mike's thought was, which was a good one, is we can work 1 and they can work 3 plan. So gives us more flexibility. And if they want me to route into licensure, then that's growth plan over time, and we can manage that too. So that's thought on it. We did find interesting information in the budget tracking documentation, and I think this alludes to some of those salary lines being high in the budget and not being expendable per se. That particular group was budgeted at 2 managers and 2 twos. That's how the math was made last year. So that's why it's really high. Whether there's a straight up 10% multiplier kicker in there also, it's again hard to tell if that one's that way. After more
Do you want me to
intense
try a little
looking
history on that? So,
from last year.
yeah, from last year, so that happened when we had the construction plant 2 operator in the management position of the facility from June through essentially just past September. And so that would somehow continue to be budgeted that way. Our wastewater treatment plant 1 that retired, he was given a provisional promotion up into a 2 during that time when we didn't have the manager. And so that's how we ended up with the budget still at wastewater treatment plant 2, and then the 2 being in that first position of the manager. And so, but it just never got changed, so that would be our guess as to why you see higher salaries and benefits in that. So that can obviously be adjusted. We had a really conversation with the finance department today, we had an alternate department meeting, and we had actually talked about this issue as well. So they're going to start the list and the work pretty quickly on, they're pretty much just gonna start over, honestly, on the spreadsheet. So I think that was really good news. So we're gonna continue to make progress. Are there any questions on the org chart? I know you just got it, so I understand if you didn't have enough time to review it, but we did try to make sure that we acknowledge what the positions.
Just a quick question for Steve.
Yes.
Steve, I know that the state can oversee some of these requirements for training and who we have in place to oversee our water and wastewater. I think it's the Department of Health that does that. Correct. So I just wanted to ask, so we've got people in place to oversee all those things right now. I mean, vacancies we have aren't affecting grad at this time. Okay. Thank you.
We're highly regulated by the state for water and wastewater.
Yes, Councilmember Ryder.
What's the class of plant that we have and what's the?
What does it require for licensure?
Yeah.
It requires a 3, group 3. And for those who don't know, water systems and wastewater systems under the Department of Health, organizational requirements based on population served, or in this case, service connections and or process. Not a lot of agencies actually have their own wastewater treatment plant process center. And gravity sewer, a lot of them pass sewer through to the county metro. But yeah, so our wastewater treatment plant requires a 3. The water system requires 2, a group 2 water operator. We have a handful of those operators, and 1 superintendent's 1. Wastewater treatment plant operator is actually both water and sewer, and then 2 crew leads or ops for water.
Yeah, I think this is really informative, and it sounds like it was a helpful process to go through, and I appreciate all the work that just looking at it just now. It's there's definitely a lot of information in it. It sounds like it was a useful endeavor, so well done. Appreciate putting this together.
For everybody too, we met with the finance committee, and a lot of these documents were things we all assumed, and apologizing because I know we had a good conversation with 3, but not 7. A lot of these documents we all assumed was in the packet last year, so we just updated what we found.
But I think
hoping people had seen it, but apparently didn't think to check.
yeah, I think sometimes understanding this stuff is and I use the word struggle just in terms of it's a process for me. I guess I can't speak for anybody else. It's a process understanding the breadth of these things, and I think I definitely feel like this is, positive progress, and I think this will help inform the process as we go forward. So I think it represents an improvement, so thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions on the organizational chart before we move forward? Yes.
So back to this attorney thing, because I notice on our organizational chart, there's no attorney under council. And I looked at some of our previous organizational charts, and that's kind of how they were in the past. But it's pretty clear to me in talking to MRSC that our mayor for the city should represent the council as well. But there's no connection with us and the attorneys in the organizational chart. So I just thought I'd get that out there. I'm not.
I think that's just an important question. We're still trying to learn about that. Usually, my understanding is the city usually has, city attorneys. It can be several of them. It can be in-house or it can be hired outside. And then it's that one attorney that provides advice and input to the mayor, to staff, to council as well. Is that correct?
The city's client, or excuse me, the attorney's client is the city as a whole, so it really,
Includes city council.
exactly.
Okay. So the question then Michelle's asking, should that be modified somehow?
Should be then. We should have city attorney underneath council as well.
Yeah.
Direct line.
I think in general, those usually go through the mayor, and if there's a question, but having said that, we often have representation at council meeting at Board of Cal, so that we can ask questions. It's been extremely helpful for us to have that relationship. I don't think we'll solve the issue of the org chart tonight, but maybe we can take a look at that and come back, Michelle, and talk about how that operates so that the org chart properly represents how this functions. Because I can see where you'd say, well, that's separate, but it's hard to put everything on certain org charts under everything. I think it's more how it actually functions. But it's a good question. Is that something we could look at, Laura?
Yes.
And just to try to understand that relationship. I've seen org charts that are so difficult to understand because they have all these convoluted lines, but there's a way to simply do that, to show the relationship as well. Other questions about that?
Okay, so we'll move on from the organizational chart. So the other, what we did also was just kind of go in and crosswalk how the word FTEs work amongst all of our documents. So what we did, and I think actually our committee recommended this, is we just created essentially a new column within our documents that show the FTEs. So for example, I'm looking at the general fund revenue expenditures year to date, and you can see that over on the left, next where it says expenditure department, we placed the FTEs within that document. And then we also, when you look at, sorry, where's it?
The only
Slide. I know, sorry, document. When we look at revenue expenditure summary, and so we looked at FTE, so you'll look at the 001 general fund, so there's 24.3 FTEs, and we kind of went and did that crosswalk. We did see some really negligible issues in the FTEs that were like, I'll call it 2 decimal points out, essentially. And we're like, okay, that's close enough, so we're comfortable as we went through the documents. And then we also looked at all of our union wage rates. And what we did is, over the left, we created a new column and put in there how many FTEs there were within that position, looking at 2020. So that's Exhibit 1B, so you'll see that we updated that. And then we also put in just some asterisks. So we highlighted with one asterisk new positions added in 2018. which was for the 1920 budget. And then I also marked the temporary 2-year positions just so we can keep track of those. And then we highlighted the ones that were funded. So that's the document that has the largest amount of our employees with connections to blue. We also did the same exercise for the police department, so you'll see again on the left, the FTEs. And then for the non-unions, we also showed what those FTEs are as well. Do we have, yes?
I'm just trying to do the math. It's so funny because on this sheet, it says we have 44.25. And on the other sheet, it's 44.75. That's a half a person, and I can't figure out where it is.
So, great question.
Yes. I knew that was gonna come up.
Things under the table.
Right. What we had discovered is how those FTEs were stratified in the budget prepared last year, the 2-year budget. They counted the parks worker as half of a 2-year budget, knowing it was fully funded the second year, right?
Yeah.
So that was the
So-
adjustment in
They
how
called it
that
a
worked.
0.5, even though it'll technically become a 1,
That's what it looked like. Because if you
because
if
it's
you go to the
straddled
other,
here. Okay.
yeah, the
So-
one chart that you had, that's the blue or gray and green and yellow, like this one. If you go to the 2 versions, because one I put as we found, which they're not labeled differently, so I apologize. If you go to the one notes of revision, which shows the full FTE for the parks worker on an annualized basis. So up top in the red, at the very far, it should say revised 12/12/19.
Yeah.
Although today's the 10th. I'm going to mark that she signed 5 earlier, it's 12, now it's in my brain.
Oh, I see, it's put in as 100% because if he gets hired, he or she gets hired, it would be at.
So that was the math as presented through the 2-year budget by what we could surmise.
That makes perfect sense. So on this one, it shows 44.25. So should this one say,
I think it should be 44.7
this one should be 7?
for an annualized basis.
Okay,
Not discrediting that there's a budget note of higher.
got it.
So,
Yes.
So, in city outside, it's not unusual for an employee to do multiple roles.
Tasks.
And so my question is, as we go to assign funds from different departments, is that, we really drill down and know exactly how many hours they spend? Is that our best effort to try to figure out how much goes to one versus another, to water versus wastewater versus?
great question.
So I know there's probably not a perfect science to
Right.
that, but I think it's an important question for us to know how those funds are divided, especially since funds like sewer and water are very specific. We don't intermix those with general funds.
Yeah, so over my student tenure here, some of these discussions would happen too in the budget process where the staff would just take a look at those allocations and are they being matched right? So they could change based on whatever. That wasn't the intent of tonight. The intent of tonight was to put what we found in there and bring it forward. On that parks position in general though, I do, and I talked to Amy, I have spoken to Christina, I do have some caution on feeding it with utilities as we're dictating the role in the job description is straight up parks only. So that might be something we want to consider when we do get to look at all the salaries and bennies with finance over the next few months, that we kind of dial that in. So that would take an amendment, right, to tweak that, which probably should be. And Dave, Dave's predecessor, Amy De Los Santos, agreed. We were both just looking at that and it's tough. Now, legitimately, there is water system on premise. There is storm utility on premise. So the bulk of that work we're thinking, certainly Big Rock and other parks, which all have those elements. So it's not a stretch to defend, but again, if it's parks, because when you say, oh, I do 5%, and then everybody gonna get a ULIP or unfurloughed practice or something on, hey, I'm working that class and working on water system, that guy makes $3 more an hour than I do because of the way that those wages were built and the So it's just, it is a little bit caution in my mind, but your question is, that is going to be strategic parks. So the Big Rock and all the other parks, we know we have ample hours to mow and maintain, turf management and synthetic field turf at Big Rock and all that we try to get to on a routine basis, but certainly don't give the amount it should get. And I think one of the interesting points too of the budget note is to look at other opportunities in lieu of FTE, so contract services for turf management. I'm actually excited to get a number on that. Maybe it's a value, maybe it's not, but we should explore those kinds of looks among two of our parks in general. So there are things to consider, but there's ample hours. Big Rock itself can probably take a full FTE.
Well, that's really helpful. I know union contracts have a piece to this too.
Yeah,
because
and they're all for it.
contractual obligations. Do you have any provisions, so during an emergency like there's snow, sometimes it's just all hands on deck.
Correct.
So I might work at the waste treatment plant, but tonight they just need me to answer phones to citizens or go put signs out or whatever it is. I just want to make sure that we have that flexibility. I think our employees get that right up front. What do you need me to do? I'll go do it, even though it's not formally in the job description. Do we as council need to look at that within our emergency preparedness and, you know, just to recognize somehow, or do you think it runs smooth enough and just let it go?
I mean, it always helps to have extra help. If you're trained appropriately, you get the training to do snowplow driving. I drove snowplow last year. John drove snowplow last year. So there are opportunities that arise. If they're not trained in it, then they can do something else. Sure. I'd actually have to double check in the union agreement. I don't recall there being any sort of all hands on deck provision, but everybody certainly
I think
works
it's
well
city
last
hours.
season.
I do too. I don't think there's a
You know,
merit to the issue in the sense of nobody's not willing to just jump in and
Right.
make things happen. But I have seen that come up, and I just want to make sure if there's some action we need to take to just recognize that, locate folks appropriately, but, you know, in my career, I've certainly taken on things that weren't my assignment, but it was just to get things done, and so I get that totally. Thank you.
So I guess I would just see I think this is helpful from a standpoint, this is the first step as to how many FTEs are out there right now, or how many budgeted. And then, so I think, some of that stuff is figured on the back end, and so it would not be my intent by, liking to see these FTEs defined and spelled out that there isn't that flexibility. In my understanding, it would seem as though you'd still, that allocation of, dollars to pay for those FTEs, would be another aspect, would be that next step of, allocation. And just real quick, in terms of, to the point of like snow events, so my understanding is we currently have like a defined allocations, so, of time for individuals. So how do you guys manage, just, I guess briefly, because I guess we could talk about the Public Works Committee when we meet, but how do you manage those situations where you, maybe we can do this on email, like how you manage situations where all of a sudden your regular business is blown up and now you have people pulling from streets 24/7.
I am a rather talking type, so I'm good time when we were fine. The green, yellow, and gray little table we have shows how everybody currently is split in their FTE allocation departmental. And so the Public Works supervisor, he tracks time through a spreadsheet and quantifies whether it was sewer work for the week or water work for the day. It's mainly entered. There is some input into Springbrook on larger chunks, like when the crew are working on overtime for water meter installation for weekends. Like that's a query we
directly
pull out of Springbrook. But for the most part, he tracks the type of work that each of the 7 members are doing and throws it into a spreadsheet that Sarah kind of created for his ease of use to really understand the hours that it takes to do. We have it broken out in 10 different items, and one of those community events at Big Ball Days, so we know what it actually costs. Park maintenance is one, of course, and then water work. But a ton of water leak on mains this year, and some bad services off the mains, and it's all tracked.
Nice, thank you.
We also monitor and make sure that our employees, if they're starting to work out of class for more than a certain amount of time, we're watching what our CPA says. So right now we have one person in finance we don't necessarily have the resources to have one of everybody,
Mhm.
so we do watch that and monitor it.
Well, I think that this, I mean, that narrative, I mean, is so much, obviously, the day-to-day operation, just understanding how it works. I think this is informative, so thank you.
So there's one number on this, general fund revenue expenditures. There's one number at the bottom that's missing, and it's under the column that says 2019-2020 budget. The very bottom, revenue less expenditures. Under the very bottom, it should say negative 180,457, because we budgeted to dig into any fund balance by that amount. So I think it's important that that number still stay on this chart, because it was on the quarterly reports.
But was it on this chart that was presented last time? Was it like we just?
I
This
have
is
the
what we
data.
had as Exhibit 1 before, and now it's been changed considerably. It took off how much we spent last year,
Yeah,
and now there's percentages.
it took off 20.
So I don't know if this is meant to be a replacement, or
All
if
we did
this
was-
is just an extra sheet, and
All I
this
did
is
was I
really
inserted a column, so maybe when I inserted a column, I shifted something out of the print window.
in this one.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, that could be.
that's all I did, is I just inserted a column,
And
and
then
then
that,
the FTEs.
okay.
It shouldn't, we changed no physical numbers other than the FTEs, so I'll pull it up and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Laura did that earlier, where she was like, I can't get to print this, and it was because the print window is set, and she typed out some different windows, like telling me what view you're in, like so.
So there is another item that I feel very passionately about, that the $400,000 for the rec center needs to be backed out of this budget. Because I was under the impression that the $400,000 for the rec center that we have not sold, it is in the revenues under other. It's part of the $763,570. But I thought it was backed out under non-departmental expenditures, but it's not. It's backed out at the ending fund balance level. So in other words, we are budgeted for $400,000 revenue, and we are spending at that level without having agreed to sell the building. It's as if I said I wanted to sell my house, and I decided to spend $500,000 in hopes that my house sold this year. It's no different than that. That's exactly what's happened on this budget. So I've penciled out what it really should look like, and if we back out the $400,000, the revenue less expenditures at the bottom will be a negative $580,457. So I don't think we can wait to take this out. It shouldn't have been put in the first place. Unfortunately, it was, and it's just misleading to think that we have $400,000 in revenues that we won't have.
Councilmember Hoag brings up a very good point. One of the difficulties with budgeting in that manner is it throws off all your cash flow analysis and all your quarterly reports. As we all know, we have never received reconciled by council quarterly reports. And so, as we have been looking at those reports as a finance committee, since we get the reports only the day of the committee, these kinds of representations, based on the way the budget was structured, and there wasn't a sale, it's constantly throwing everything off. And I think we should be making those adjustments so that we have an accurate picture of where we really are at the end of the year. I guess the other question I would have is, since we are still reconciling so many expenses through the end of the third quarter, I'm very concerned about paying down beginning fund balance. And that's the $180,000 that is represented in the 2019-2020 budget. So, because there are still many things at play, because we don't have a map of all the adjustments to really reconcile things at the end of the year. One of my concerns is a finance practice that was implemented in prior years is inadvertently occurring, which was the council was presented budget information at the time budgets were adopted. In fact, what was happening was what was happening at that time, I wasn't on council, what was happening, and this was disclosed to us by our interim accountant director, was that there was an accrual of money in one year, which in fact did not occur until the next year. That's essentially like running two sets of books from an accounting standpoint. Now, it's important to note that it was adjusted in the following year. So that's a good thing. But that still means the council at that time was making budget decisions on incorrect revenue information for that year. You can't run an accrual system and a cash system. It's one or the other. Now, we're doing a cash system here. But accruing a $400,000 value for a sale that has not occurred has some of the same difficulties. So I'll just leave it at that. I think it needs to be backed out. I think we have to look at the real numbers of what the cash flow is looking at when we make a budget decision, when we get quarterly reports.
So I think that question that council's asked before is we've got the $400,000 from the rec center that we haven't sold, so that's the key point, I think, Mayor.
And we learned that this was done by the previous finance director in the budget, and I have been having discussions with council members ongoing over the last several months. This is one of the tasks that the interim finance director was aware of and was supposed to be rectified. It hasn't been done. We now have a new finance director that is digging into these things and will make these changes. I am nervous about going ahead and making changes without her being the one to do that at this point, because I think that she needs to be, as finance director, as our duly hired finance director, be the one to make these evaluations and be looking at this information and making it right. Obviously, over the last 2 years, as we learned during the biennial budget process, there were many things done budget-wise previously that, as a council member, I was unaware of, that I wasn't comfortable with. As administration, we came together and started making significant changes, not just how we budget, but how we allow our departments to spend money. For example, one of the other changes that we made coming in budget is that our new finance director has already brought up, is that the fund balance is added into expenditures. And to me, I don't like that. Previously, that's where previous administrations would spend unallocated, unrestricted budget money, and I don't like the way that works. So that's an internal process that our directors already know they're not supposed to be doing, and I'm hoping to have a formal procedure change internally once they get settled. So we are well aware of this and have been having open discussions with folks about it. But again, I would like to ask Dana the grace and space to get settled so that she can make these changes and know what's going on as she's doing it.
Yeah.
The problem with that is, as you always remind us, all of this responsibility falls on you.
Yep.
And you supervised all these people. And these problems have been brought up by council members over and over again. And, let me add, we are routinely given Excel spreadsheets in lieu of printed out reports. So nothing precluded, this is during the last year, nothing precluded giving us that type of information as well. So instead, we kept getting reports, and reports, by the way, that were shared with the public, which I see as a major problem in transparency, that were incorrect. So again, you've made it very clear, you're the executive and these are your choices and your decisions. But the reality is we were getting reports that could have been corrected with Excel spreadsheets accompanying them that did not correctly report the revenue in the city, and those went to the public. And that is a fundamental problem.
I don't disagree, and keep in mind, until last week, we've been without a finance director since March. We were not able to get an interim finance director in for quite a while. We were without our payroll assistant who retired. without an accountant, which we are still without. And yes, the interim finance director was asked to do these things and it didn't happen. And so there is reasons why there are certain people that aren't here today. And we have been making appropriate changes to get this fixed, which is part of the reason we hired our current finance director. So again, there are things that take a while to get a handle on. If you don't have the people there to do the work can't get done. And that's what we've been working on. So I will leave it at that, but
Good.
that is,
Let's bring something back into the record. I was appointed to council on June 4th. On June 7th, there was a meeting that discussed the financial needs of the city. That information was brought forward to you. At that time, council very clearly said to you that anything you needed to get that accounting department going, including extra time from wherever, you had, come to us to give you that authority. You chose not to do that.
that is not accurate.
Oh, really?
That is
So
not
I,
accurate.
what was
So-
not accurate? Be
so
specific
we-
about that meeting.
Specifically, we had
Specifically
to
to
go
the
out,
meetings.
we had to go out to recruit a finance director twice. One of which was done in-house to save the city money. That recruitment was not successful. The only qualified candidate backed out after a background check. Then we asked council for the authority to use a consulting firm. That process took, approximately 6 months? 4 to 6 months, which is standard for these level of positions. The accounting position we put out the first time did not have any qualified candidates. We put it out again, and actually we held off at the request of the interim finance director at the time, because we were hoping to get that finance director in faster. We recruited twice. We have hired, we have been using the outside assistance that we could obtain, and for council's recollection, when we did hire an interim finance director, that was the only person available at that time. We were very fortunate after multiple attempts to find additional help that we were able to get somebody in part-time who can only work a certain limited number of hours a week. Part of the challenge with finance right now, it is very difficult to not only recruit people for positions and have them qualified to the level of service that is needed at the city, as well as just finding anyone to fill the position.
I'm afraid that doesn't really answer my point. And, this is a problem. You are asking council to accept quarterly reports that we have known through the Finance and Administration Committee were not reconciled. But most important, you've been putting that information in the public realm. And that is a serious problem. They're not marked draft. They're not marked preliminary. Most of the time, they don't have dates on them in terms of individual documentation. So as a citizen, how are the citizens supposed to look at our website information, the posting, and know that that information is preliminary?
Right.
That is not
Council
something,
Before we
demanded
go
that
on,
those reports
I really
go.
want to
This is
interject.
That isn't what
really
happened.
out of hand.
No, it's not.
Hang on, I really want to interject a little bit, because we get a little bit away from our focus on, I think it's an important discussion, but I think it takes us away. We recognize that for almost a year, we've had plenty of issues with the finance department. And we haven't gotten reports, Doc, to your point, were inaccurate. And I'm not confident, while we really appreciate the mayor having assigned both Laura and Steve to really help get us caught up, they admit they're not accountants. And so we've done, I think, that they've done the best they can to try to present
yes,
this.
they have.
But I don't think any of us, including Laura and Steve, or the mayor, would say, well, these are just spot on. We know that there's issues with the rec center haven't been included in there. We'd like it to be taken out because it's truly not revenue. And we're not going to fix that tonight. I'm under no pretense that all of this is perfect. I do feel extremely confident that our new finance director has the skill set to get us back on board, and it's not going to be done before we're required to review and move things forward. So all I'm trying to say is I do think we do need to continue to have a measure of grace while we do get this up. I do think there's a place to be able to discuss things that we've learned from the last 2-year budget, and we've learned plenty, things that are concerning. And while I'd love to settle that during the mid-buy so we can move into next year with really a clean slate. I don't think there's any practical way to do that. There was a lot of things that were just out of bounds last year. I think department directors worked hard to try to stay within their budgets, but overall, we don't have a good view. Some people have called it flying blind. It's really tough to know as council when you're supposed to be taking a look at these budgets and not have a solid ground to stand on. And it's just a reality. What I am confident in is we can start moving forward. And, you know, every council member has to decide themselves how comfortable they are in this big gray area right now. Are we ready to be able to move forward here and improve the mid-buy and move on, knowing that over the next several months, Dana's going to be diving in, providing a lot of information and trying to rectify things. I think you know me well enough. I'm always looking down the road, how do we get there? So I'm just encouraging us, not just to look positively, but to say, we have some light at the end of the tunnel. We do need to come back and talk about some of these and be very specific so we avoid these problems in the future. And that's what I see you trying to do.
$580,000
It's a big swing.
misrepresentation is not a
Yeah.
little thing, it's
And
a
so,
big thing.
I don't want to play that down. We get that it's a big thing, Dot. I just, you know, my concern is, you know, we can try to assign blame for these or just pinpoint.
I'm
I
not
do
putting
think
blame.
we'll have opportunity to come back and say, how do we avoid this in the future? And we'll be developing financial policies, and of course yourself, Michelle, and Jennifer being on the finance committee will be a big part of that. So we have a lot to go forward with. You've been very
So,
patient,
what I'd like to
Michelle.
say, in Amy De Los Santos's defense, I discussed this $400,000 with her multiple times during finance meetings, but we were told that for her to change it, she would have to bring it to council, and it was never brought to council.
So that
So-
is news to me.
That's
And
what we were told during the finance meeting, so.
that is news to me. And as we've all had personal discussions, we probably should have discussed staff performance in a public meeting. We have, even over the past week, I have learned things that I was not brought into the loop on by either council or the interim finance director. And I can't fix things if I'm not aware of them. And so this, I was not, to my knowledge, was not shared that information with, Amy did not, that the interim finance director did not share that information with me. And I talked to her every single day I was at the office. So again, this is to Mayor Pro Tem Remington's point, many of the issues we're dealing with are systemic from before I took office as mayor. We've identified issues, are trying to fix them, and we are in a huge transition phase to get these things right and not having a fight. As you all remember, we learned last year during the budget process that our previous finance director was cut out of the budget process other than putting the budget together the first time during that 2018 budget process, which none of us were aware of until we were in the middle of the biennium budget process. There are a lot of challenges. There's a lot of lack of documentation overall in the finance department that extends years and years back that this is Amy and her staff have to sort through, and it is going to take time.
Michelle?
So back to the $400,000, I do realize this is something that we as council approved. Dorothy wasn't in that, but during the budget process, so I realize it. And Jennifer's the only one that came forward and explained the problem. I didn't get it at the time. I now get it. It's a big problem. It's two numbers that can be taken off expenditures, and it is, I'm sure it's something that our new finance director can do immediately. There's no reason we have to wait 3 or 4 months for her to make that change. It's two numbers. It's one number, really. So it can be done. That's all I have to say.
So I think the point you made, this is a big issue, having that 400,000 revenue that doesn't actually exist. The mayor, my understanding, she recognizes it as well. I hear some
We were
disappointment.
aware of that in the budget process.
I know, yes, I know that. I'm not, yeah.
And I hear some disappointment that these things have been brought up in the past and haven't been dealt with yet. But I just want to come back. So being aware of this, you know?
Yeah, we talked to her about it today.
So we're in no
So come on.
pretense that we've got $400,000.
Yes, but we did just get Before, we had access only to a PDF spreadsheet up until earlier this week, because we had Megan out. We have access to the spreadsheets now, so we can make that adjustment. It's pretty, it is, I'm not saying it's easy, but it is pretty easy. You know, we did say that we had wanted to wait, and that was a staff perspective, that we wanted to wait until, you know, Dana could do it. But it is, we can take it out and.
I have another question. Laura, when was the Prothman process started?
Carrie, I was on vacation when it started, and honestly that was August, because that's when I was on vacation.
Okay, so in August, the Prothman, and at that, what I recall was there was this incredible rush to get the contract for Prothman to council, and there was a finance and administration meeting, and based on the need, we agreed to that it going forward. However, all the materials that were needed for council approval were not fully distributed to council. But council had a leap of faith and still put that contract forward. So let's count the months, okay? 6 months? No, it's not 6 months. And there are other things like that, Mayor, where we gave support to looking at things and no information came back. So I don't know why that information doesn't come back. You had a finance and administration committee that was poised to assist you, and information didn't come back. It was a constant pattern. It was a constant pattern. Now, I don't control your management meetings, right? I expect that as mayor, you are communicating with your lead staff. I do not in any way believe that the directors working on this budget have not been acting with good faith or with whatever tools they had. But at the end of the day, if we have not been getting complete information, as you pointed out, it's your responsibility. And so now we're faced with a pushing forward a biennium budget that we do not know what's happening with all the money. And that's a problem. That's a fiduciary problem.
So I think there's some inaccuracies here. And the inaccuracy, so again, I talk to the interim finance director every day, nearly every day that I was in the office, and continue to ask her questions on how things were going. I would like to talk to you offline about the specifics, because it's not fair to drag a former
I don't need to
contract
know that
employee.
stuff.
You actually do, because it will provide context to what has actually been going on. And you have not reached out to call, I have not received phone calls from most council members on these issues, and found out about issues that have come up on the finance committee through staff and oftentimes at council meetings. And many of the issues, in fact, I learned of issues just last week that I was never informed of by the interim finance director or the members of the finance committee. So I cannot do my job if this body is not bringing these issues to me. And that is a huge, huge part of the communication and disconnect issue that's occurring.
But what you're just
Hang on
saying,
a
though,
second.
is
Just
that
hold on.
your staff aren't communicating.
Let's wait
The
till
I'm
interim
shocked.
finance director was
No, I'm
not.
talking about your other
Wait.
staff that have been
I'm
working.
not
Mayor,
talking about my other
let's
staff.
stop for a minute, let's just
I'm
come up for a
confused.
breath. I think,
Staff alike has found out things that
okay,
have
is there a
occurred.
place for this
This is
discussion?
not the appropriate place for this discussion.
Please be recognized so we can talk. I know the frustration that we have, and for our citizens, a lot of this that you see pour out is because of some other things going on. And I think it's just so important for us to recognize that we're where we're at. I'm not saying we shouldn't have this discussion. I think some of these are better done one-on-one. It's frustrating for everybody. Nobody likes being in meetings where there's so much contention. I want to keep focused that we're working on our mid-buy budget. And while all these points are related to it, I don't think picking at each other and trying to, I think it shows there's a lot of communication errors that we have. Jennifer, you were patiently waiting.
So I just wanted to mention really quick, I mean, it's been a frustrating year, I think, for everyone. And I'm trying to focus on where we're at with this budget process. And the request that came through during the finance committee meeting was, can we get a column added and show where our FTEs are at this point? Because there have been a lot of changes since we approved the budget last year that I think council has become aware of as we're viewing an org chart that's different than what we'd approved. So our request in finance is, can we have a fresh start? Can you show us where are we today? So we can understand that, and they did that, and I really appreciate it. It sounds like, you know, trying to dig through documents was challenging. So I'm very grateful for that. So they did do that, and I do, Michelle's point is very valid, and it was the point I was trying to make a year ago. And I don't know how well I succeeded, but Michelle brought it to me the other day and asked me about it, and I was like, oh, yes, that is what I was trying to explain a year ago. So it was kind of funny when it came up, but it is, since we aren't adopting the line item budget, it's really just, you know, we adopt at the fund level, and one of these reports is, you know, just the general fund. It really only affects the general fund. It's really just a couple places. If that's too much work, I completely understand, but it does, when you adopt a budget that shows revenue that we really is kind of an unknown revenue, you're really authorizing spending.
No.
When you bring it in. I
Most
know
of
that you
money
have
was
to
about
file
restricted funds.
Go ahead.
it does skew the amount of revenue we expect to get, and I do think that there would be value. 400,000 is a pretty big number compared to the budget. So if that's something that can be done, I would be supportive of it. If it's really going to cause a lot of angst and chaos, I can also move forward. But I think there is value in that. But anyway, I just want to say that the very specific requests that were made during the finance committee to help us understand what is our baseline now for staffing, so we could understand what's changed and where we're at now, that was done, and I am very thankful for that. Very thankful.
So, Chief, I think you had your hand up and then.
No, I just
Michelle?
letting you know you're almost out of time.
Oh, I've been watching that, it's pretty close, thank you for that.
I just
Michelle?
want to say, it sounds like we have a solution to the disconnect that we've had with Finance Committee and the mayor, in that we've talked about having you come and join us for finance meetings, or maybe even just a portion of it, and come in at the tail end so we can give you a brief description of what's going on. Maybe that'll help with future problems like this.
And I do have to say, I want to recognize that I think both Councilmember Sugg and Councilmember Kaplan, I had some really good conversations in the last week because a lot of the challenges really boil down to us being unaware that we didn't have certain information, me being unaware that certain things were occurring, which I've already discussed in depth with each of you. And I think, you know, I have no doubt that we all want to be at the same place with these things, and there are going to have to be some fundamental changes to how the budget is put together, and how it operates. And we, as administration, are completely supportive of that, because if it makes it easier for us, it makes it easier for you as well. And we really, really want to get past this point and get the finance group up and running to a point where we can not just look at the past and look what's been done, but start looking forward and developing our internal policies that make things easy to understand, not just for council when we come with budget, but also for staff, because there's been a lot of spinning wheels trying to find out things. And this is, you know, it's a long-standing thing. The city is in the process of growing up and professionalizing. And it's taking time, and the hardest part is when you're learning about the way things have operated in the past, and trying to identify what's accurate and what's not, and then finding the path forward to make sure things are accurate and clear and concise. I have full faith and confidence in Dana Mason. She had her 4th partial day today, and she is more sharp than any finance director in my experience at the city. And I think that, you know, continue to give her the grace and space and have her select her employee, because that is the finance director's role, to choose her staff. will be very helpful, and she's already, she's ready to begin that process. But also keep in mind, depending on who that hire is, she's also going to have to train that person. And we still have a lot of training necessary for our payroll person because that person didn't get appropriate training when she came on board. And we have actually had that discussion during our finance department meeting today, and have made it clear to those finance folks that any training or assistance they need, we will give them, but we just need to know what it is. We made that clear to the previous interim finance director, and I was never asked for additional resources. I kept talking. So Dana is in a good spot, and we need to be supportive of her. She will be able to identify and see things that have happened in the past. And she will be able to provide some perspective, even if it's not knowing exactly how it got to be. And then she will be able to make really good recommendations and changes internally for the future. And I think that to Mayor Pro Tem Remington's point, that is really where the focus should be at this point. And so, there are things within my control, things that aren't. It is my responsibility to manage the group. There are reasons that I've made staffing changes. With those staffing changes, when it takes time to fill positions, there is more strife and more heartache and frustration. And that frustration exists at council, it exists in the mayor's office, and it exists with staff as well. And when things go negative towards me or city staff, it provides an unhealthy impact, when the reality is we all have the same goal, and we should be working together on this stuff. And we shouldn't be, again, if issues come up, I need to know. My staff is extraordinarily busy, and they can't tell me everything that's going on. They're running the whole thing, so I need that communication from this body in order to be able to carry out my roles and responsibilities.
Well, then you can read the budget notes that the committee prepares.
So I think there was a recommendation about the mayor attending our financial committee. I do think that that's an important step on our communication. So it's just after 7 o'clock, and we need to move to council. But I want to keep in perspective here. So we're still on mid-buy. We're coming back next Tuesday, which is kind of our last real chance to approve it. So I want to make sure we've kind of short work time tonight with other discussion. How are you and Steve doing with our presentation? Do we need more time to keep moving through this?
I'm sorry, I had my head in a spreadsheet.
So we're ready to conclude the meeting, but I don't want to do that because until I hear from you, how are we doing with our new budget?
It's on the regular agenda as well, so we're
Okay, so
good.
we can continue if need be. Council members, I just want to make sure before I close this out, budget is so important, getting our mid-buy done, staying focused on that. There are real issues and real concerns. It's really our top priority. So I don't want to cut discussion short. I realize that there's a lot going on here more than we have time to resolve. So if everybody's okay, I'll go ahead and we'll adjourn this meeting and then we'll move into city council. But we'll take about a 5-minute break because we need to, there's several things that need to be set up here before we go to council. So without any objection, our committee of the whole is adjourned. And for our citizens, we're moving into city council in a bit. If you want to stay for that, you're welcome. If it's time to head home, you're welcome to do that as well.